Hey there, how's it going? Nice to see you again. So it's autumn and the leaves are changing colors and it's getting cool out and the light is just beautiful. It's a little hazy though. 10 miles away from here we still have that forest fire that's kind of still smoking. So everything's hazy. But the filtered light is kind of interesting. And the leaves are all changing colors. Sorry about the audio. My Rode Wireless Go took a dump. So I got that on repair back in the truck. And if that starts working again, I will have better audio. But yeah, this video's kind of about my week in review. It's been a busy week. A lot of little photo details I've been taking care of. Been working on the darkroom, trying to get that organized and get that more efficient. And a big thing was I bought I don't know if you've been watching my videos, but you know I've been kind of cursing at this Sekonic L-858D-U light meter that I bought. And I'm with Ben Horn. The screen is still leaves a lot to be desired. It's like a 2000 cell phone, an old cell phone, 20-year-old cell phone screen, which is kind of sad because they charge $600 for this meter. I mean, you can get a brand new iPhone 13 with a Retina display and Gorilla Glass for $700, right? So, yeah, Sekonic, come on, huh? But it works. But the real bugaboo with this meter, and the thing that made me want to get the Ravini Lab spot meter, is something you do all the time when you're spot metering with this meter. So you take your readings, blah, 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 took the readings, average them, and then you're like, you know, I want to get some readings from a different place with a different average. And so you want to clear the memory. And you have two function buttons that you can change on this meter. But clear the memory was not an option. And so to clear the memory, and this is how bad it is, I have this memorized, you had to hit toolbox, second screen, clear memory, all, okay, and then your memory was cleared. So it was like 5 button pushes and 3 menus, or 2 menus, to clear the menu. Well, that sucked. Like to clear the memory, okay? Well, that just sucked. That was like, this sucks, okay? This is really inelegant. It was really poor programming. Well, it turns out that there was a software update, a firmware update for this meter. And it was like a year ago. And this week I updated the firmware on this meter. That in and of itself was an adventure. Sekonic not being, you know, Canon, Nikon, or Sony, you have to download this program. It took like 20 minutes to upload the firmware into this thing. However, it was successful, and now I can set one of my buttons to be memory clear. So I am much happier with this meter now because it's much more efficient. Yeah, I gotta close the flap now where I plugged it into the computer. Okay, it is much more efficient now, and this meter works great from the standpoint of, you know, meter, average, clear memory, do it again. Beautiful. It's the way it all should have been from the beginning. The other thing is recently I've kind of realized that, and I started out doing this years ago with an old Sekonic L-398, which I'd like to get another one of. Those were really cool. But I'm starting to use incident readings more frequently. Like, the trick to incident readings is that you've got to be in the same light as your subject. So like right here, if I were photographing down here, it wouldn't work because I'm in the shade and some of that's in the sunlight. So now if I came over there, we're off camera into the sunlight, and I held the meter up into the sunlight and pointed the dome at the lens, let's say this was the camera I was using, yeah, I could get an accurate reading, incident reading, okay? The difference is that An incident reading is the light falling on the subject, and a spot reading, which would be a reflected light reading, is the light that the subject's reflecting. So an incident reading is pretty accurate if you can get it. It's probably, in my opinion, the most accurate reading, okay? But it doesn't work for everything, okay? And reflected readings have to be interpreted, because your reflective reading is going to be turning whatever you're pointing your spot meter at to 18% gray. So if you're spot metering a white subject, it's going to turn it gray. If you're spot metering a black subject, it's going to turn it gray. The simple thing is, and the real quick zone system, what the whole zone system is based on, is if you want your white, you know, take a reflected reading of your white thing, and if you want it to be white on your film, you know, overexpose it 2 stops. And so your black reading, when you get your black reading, if you want it to be black on your film, underexpose it 2 to 3 stops. 2 to 3, 2 to 3. Okay, fair enough. So there it is. So much happier with the Sekonic meter, and it's kind of worth the wait in terms of physical weight to bring with me. The size is kind of big too. It's like bringing another camera with you. I mean, this thing is bigger and heavier than my ZV-1. So yeah, that's another thing. The ZV-1, it was kind of, after all this time that I've had it for the past couple of months, I think the ZV-1 was kind of a waste of money. It's got some real annoying peculiarities. It's really only has one really annoying thing about it, and that's that where you screw the tripod socket, where you screw the quick release in, it covers up the battery door, and the batteries are so tiny that, like, I get 20 minutes of video recording out of them, and then I have to change the battery, and so I have to unscrew the quick release. It really, like, there's no point in having a quick release on the thing other than it has to be compatible with all my tripods, because it really is a pain. You know, you have to take quick release off to get to the batteries, which happens all the time. So I'm not thrilled with the ZV-1. It does a good job, but it's kind of a one-hit wonder. It's a video camera for me. I don't really use it for stills at all. So, and the GoPro seems to do a great job now that I've really taken the time to dial it in. So yeah, so the ZV-1 was kind of a purchase I sort of regret. It's expensive for what it is, and it's not very good. The video quality is great, and the photos are okay, I guess, for, you know, a postage size, really tiny sensor camera. But the videos are good, but it's really clunky in use. The GoPro with its goofy mounting system is even better than the ZV-1, so go figure, you know, on that. So yeah, another thing that I'm doing is I am revitalizing my Bessler 45MX Mark II enlarger. And the cool thing about Bessler enlargers, and why they're great if you live in the United States, is because Bessler's still in business and they have schematics and parts for all their enlargers that, in theory, you can, I'll get back to that, in theory you can order parts from Bessler to, if anything breaks or you want to upgrade stuff or fix stuff. And my enlarger didn't come with, so it's the frame in the back, and it didn't come with the 2 rails that stick out with the baseboard. So the baseboard's like 230 bucks from Bessler, and I don't know how much the rails are, and they even sell the screws. I have part numbers for all this stuff. It's all online. And the 45MXT, which is their current enlarger, which is like $3 grand, $3,500 just for the chassis. It's all, the most 90% of the parts are compatible. So definitely the rails and the baseboard, I'm 99.9% sure that those parts are compatible. So I'm just gonna order them from Bessler and get the real thing, and I don't have to screw with it, I don't have to build anything, I don't have to jury rig anything. I made some aluminum rails out of, you know, thin aluminum, and I made this baseboard out of an old piece of 3/4 inch ply I had, but it's wonky. You know, for $3,500, I'm only into that enlarger for like 250 bucks. So, well, 300 bucks if you count the condenser head I bought for it, and which works perfectly. And so it's worth throwing, you know, $300-400 at it to make it like perfect and factory new for all intents and purposes. Yeah, so that's another thing I'm working on. Now I said in theory, because I emailed them on Tuesday, and I even talked to a guy on Tuesday, and now it's Friday, and I haven't heard back from him. There might be mitigating circumstances there. I'm sure they'll get back to me eventually, but yeah, you know, people complain about Intrepid, and Intrepid's not even on the same continent as I am. And I can email Intrepid and they get back to me within 24 hours. So yeah, whatever. But I'm just, even having said all that, I'm really glad that Bessler's still in business. I'm glad they still make the parts. And I'm glad, hopefully, that I'll be able to get those parts for my, what could be, I don't know, the 45 MX2 was probably made in the 60s or 70s. So that's like a 30, 40, 50-year-old enlarger that I can still get parts for, maybe. You know, I think I can. That's better than any car. So there it is. Yeah, so hopefully this audio is good enough. It's just the GoPro media mod, and I hope it's doing okay. So going back to meters, so my Ravini Labs spot meter is small and lightweight. I've got the AAA battery pack on it. Now that I've got my Sekonic dialed in, and one of the things I've been wanting to do for a long time is test the Ravini Labs versus the Sekonic. And the Ravini Labs isn't doing so well. So the Ravini Labs will get you in the ballpark, but it's not like the Sekonic where it's like nailing it, all right? So yeah, I'm not overly impressed with the Ravini Labs. The other thing about the Ravini Labs is it struggles in lower light. So the Sekonic spot meter, as it should, because it's a $600 meter, it goes down to like -5 EV. And if you know anything about meters, that's pretty dark. So that's really good. That's a really sensitive meter. And the Sekonic 1 degree spot, I mean, it's 1 degree. It's like you can take a light bulb and you can get right on the edge of the light bulb and you'll get like 6 stops under in a dark room, right? So what I'm saying is like the Sekonic spot is really tight, okay? The Ravini Labs, not so much. It's an approximation is what it is. I'll put it to you this way. The Sekonic spot meter for 600 bucks, if it had a better screen on it, at this point, now with the new firmware, if it had a better screen on it and better programming, it's still kind of like, you know, 2000 cell phone programming in a way, you know, the readouts and the menus and things. If it was a little bit more efficient, kind of like the new Sony menus, right? It would be worth the 600 bucks. For what it is, it's a little expensive for what it is. I hate to say it's Sekonic. The Ravini Labs spot meter, for what it is at like $200, $220, it's expensive for what it is. I was expecting a little bit more precision performance out of it. Like all the modes are nice, but when it really comes down to it, like when you point the spot, the 1 degree at something, like, you know, you want it to read out accurately. It's not, it's more of an approximation than the Sekonic. The Sekonic gives you a real feeling of confidence, like that spot is that reading. The readings are a little off. Sometimes they're a little higher than the Sekonic, sometimes they're a little lower than the Sekonic. So the Ravini Labs spot meter is not giving me that kind of confidence. It's usable, but I don't think, knowing what I know now, and now that the Sekonic, my major beef with the Sekonic is fixed in terms of the memory clear option, like I wouldn't have bought this again. And you're not gonna hear that on any other channel on YouTube. So, you know, maybe you don't care, but still, it's information that if for the 2 people out there in the world that are gonna care about that, you heard it here, okay? So there it is. Another thing I've been thinking about this week is, you know, your fiber-based paper for your darkroom, your silver gelatin fiber-based paper, that's a wood-based paper. And your resin-coated is a wood-based paper, and your resin-coated is wood-based with a plastic coating on it. Resin being a fancy name for a plastic. And your fiber-based paper is wood-based paper with an emulsion on it, and I get all that. But the archival standard for inkjet prints is cotton-based paper. And Ilford actually teamed up with Hahnemühle, and Ilford makes a darkroom silver gelatin emulsion paper that's fiber-based. And people have a real hard time with it because evidently, I guess the paper soaks up the chemicals pretty bad, and you have to really wash them pretty hard. And the technique's a little different than it is with the wood-based, like Ilford multi-grade fiber base, because evidently people are getting a lot of staining on the edges, and that's a sign that they're not washing the chemicals out sufficiently. So, but having said that, like, so then that makes me ask the question, so why is Ilford multi-grade fiber base paper the gold standard amongst darkroom papers and inkjet digital prints? Why does Wilhelm Research say that they say it because it tests the best. Yeah, I get that. But if it's a wood-based paper, is it really as archival as a cotton-based inkjet print? These are the things that keep me up at night. And if you're here watching this, you're either laughing or they bother you too. So, and if they bother you too, so leave a comment. Let me know if you're bothered by that. You're probably not, but you may not even be aware of it. But it doesn't bother me. It kind of makes me wonder. I mean, the 20th century, last century, the fiber-based paper was the thing, right? That's what Ansel Adams photographed on. And so it has a proven track record. There are photographs that Ansel Adams made in the 1930s on fiber-based silver gelatin papers that look like they were made today. So they've stood the test of time for almost 100 years. But the question is you know, what about these cotton-based, pigment-based ink papers and processes? So it's still a new process, but there's been a lot of technology and thought and effort and research and development thrown into these modern processes and modern papers. Really, and then to add to the total conundrum and confusion, I saw a thing where somebody said that Michael Kenna, who gets $3,000 per print, and when he comes out with a new print, at least back in a few years ago, this was what I was led to believe. When he comes out with a new print edition of 45, he sells them out pretty much immediately. Okay, and we're talking about a 7.5 by 7.5 square on a 16 by 20 in a 16 by 20 frame for $3,000. Limited editions of 45. Okay, I would assume that for me, I would think, with my background and my experience and my knowledge, that they would all be fiber-based papers, and I'm not so sure that that's true, because I can't really pin it down, but somebody said that Michael Kenna uses Ilford multi-grade resin-coated paper for his limited editions. Ilford's been saying that the resin-coated papers are as archival as the fiber-based nowadays. And the resin-coated papers are as archival because they've improved the resins and everything that make them have longevity, but also because the resin-coated papers don't absorb the sodium thiosulfate, the fixer. And you don't have to wash them as much. Like fiber-based paper has to be processed properly, or else it's not archival. Okay, because the fixer will kill it eventually, turn it yellow. So the resin-coated papers don't suffer from that as much. I mean, a resin-coated paper print you have to wash for maybe 10 minutes, whereas a fiber-based paper, geez, I wash them for at least an hour. So yeah, so what's the takeaway from everything that I've been reading and researching and spending way too much time on? Is that I think that a properly processed fiber-based print, or a properly processed resin-coated print, or a inkjet print with pigment inks with an archival track record like the Epson Ultrachromes or the Lucia pigment inks from Canon, okay, original equipment manufacturer inks, on an archival paper like the Moab Juniper 100% cotton rag Burita, or the Hahnemühle Burita, etc., 100% cotton rag paper. I think they're all probably pretty much equal in terms of archivability and collectability. I think the only difference really comes down to the aesthetic. Which do you prefer? Can you really even see a difference? And I'm not even sure that's possible anymore. And I think that it comes down to there's no question about it. The darkroom print is a one-off. I can have a printing regime for a negative in the darkroom, but every one of them is going to be very slightly different, okay, with the dodging and burning, because you just can't do the same. You know, human beings aren't machines, and you can't do it exactly the same every time. So each time you print a negative, it's a one-time performance. You can get them pretty similar, right? But just like when an orchestra performs a symphony, it's going to be slightly different each time, okay, because it's a human thing, all right? And that's not a bad thing. But it's a handmade product, okay? The darkroom print is a handmade product. A machine print out of a Canon printer is, you know, once you get it dialed in and you like it the way it is, you push the button, it comes out exactly the same every time. So that's the difference. What am I gonna do moving forward? I'm gonna do all of it because I enjoy all of it. My color stuff is definitely going to be inkjet prints, and my black and whites are going to be either inkjet prints or darkroom prints, okay? So, because I enjoy all of it, all right? And it's nice to bounce back and forth, and my darkroom printing improves my inkjet printing. I can't say my inkjet printing improves my darkroom printing, but there it is. So yeah, so that's where I'm at. All right, photographic deep thoughts. Thanks for watching.